As you know by now, SAG-AFTRA's National Board just approved a tentative agreement between the Actors Union and studios and streamers, suspending a 118-day strike. The deal now moves forward to the 160,000 members of the union on a vote to ratify the contract. Voting began November 14th with ballots due in early December. But not everyone is happy with the details of that agreement. Some members are calling for other members to keep resisting, not to ratify the contract, which they say is unfair. But most of these agreements between actors, unions, and studios and streamers have a history of being unfair for Black artists. Don't get me wrong, I'm not scrutinizing the union's reasons for striking. Just bringing attention to the fact that for Black entertainers, the strike and tentative agreement misses the mark. Let me preface this by saying that Black Americans are the bottom caste in America and face wage and hiring gaps and other forms of discrimination in all areas, especially labor, including the entertainment industry. The first inkling we saw of this was during the pandemic, when the U.S. was shut down and only essential workers were allowed to continue working. Gabrielle Union provided a spotlight to the fact that most Black entertainers are only 1 to 2 checks away from not being able to pay their bills, and that many don't actually have steady income or savings. Why this didn't resonate with us at the time, that most Black entertainers were underpaid, basically broke, living gig to gig, is because they marketed a perception of success. Their leverage and bankability depend partly on maintaining illusions. Aspirational living, from a studio executive's perspective, is good business. That is until the pandemic and subsequently the Writers Guild and SAG-AFTRA strike forced into the open the details of how artists are struggling. Further, exposure to how this industry, including how SAG-AFTRA undervalues and undergirds the exploitation of Black talent, is part of the problem. Listen to these 3 clips.
It's not just one thing, but we want fairness, better health care, better residuals. I literally get 1 cent residuals. I'm like, the paper costs more than the residuals. So we just got to make a change, you know.
Countess Vaughn and I did a show called The Parkers. The Parkers has now been on air for 24 years. And they're trying to convince us, through our ownership of the show, that we made absolutely no money.
And it's baffling, being that when you have a conversation with the executive producers and they allude to the fact that the show in its entirety, 5 years, was made for under $70 million. It went out of production in 2004, but by 2009, we see profit participation statements that show the program made over $700 million, but yet was in a close to $1 billion, if not $1 billion deficit.
So what we're asking you, CBS, is can you please treat these 2 Black women fairly?
Let me ask you a question about you releasing that movie Showdown at the Grand and the recent announcement that the SAG-AFTRA strike has struck a deal. How did that affect any of your work? Because I see you kept it moving.
Well, let me share with you. I did a show called Empire. They took my face from, they took an image from me singing It's Hard Out Here for a Pimp on Hustle and Flow. They took that image, made it black, flipped it and sold it as the logo for Empire and put it on every piece of merchandise, all of that. Never gave me a penny of it. Hid their records, said that they had made it up, and then I had to get a forensic photographer to show them this came from exactly this frame. It matches all the pores, the sweat, the hair follicle, to where it's impossible. But I had to go through all of this stuff to try and get my face back. So what the industry will do for you, because SAG, when I asked them, They say in their mission statement, we are here to protect your rights of publicity. But when I asked them about it, they ignored me. They placated me, never did one thing, never called Disney or Fox and say, hey, you guys have done something wrong. They didn't send a letter saying we're gonna boycott. You're stealing somebody's face, because they were getting their money from them. They only cared when their streaming money was disappearing. So I don't care that Fox, that SAG is there. I don't think they're a good union for us. I think we need to develop a brand new union. That's why we've developed myholly.app, so we can get rid of the unions, get rid of the studios, get rid of the agents, and allow all the creatives to have access to each other, because they're just pimping us anyway.
Right.
I agree with Terrence. Creatives should have their own unions. There was a time in history prior to SAG-AFTRA that Black performers across various disciplines, such as actors, singers, comedians, musicians, dancers, and acrobats, established their own circuit like vaudeville shows, traveling troupes, and chitlin circuits to showcase their talents in alternative spaces, such as tents, schools, and auditoriums, because they were systematically excluded from white venues. And when they did perform in white venues, they weren't compensated fairly. Organizations like the Negro Actors Guild played a crucial role in advocating for equal representation and working conditions for Black performers. Other organizations include the Black Filmmakers Hall of Fame, the Coalition of African American Artists, the Hollywood branch of the NAACP, the National Black Theater Network, Black Women's Playwrights Group, Association for the Advancement of Creative Musicians, Black Arts Movement, Project One Voice, and the Colored Players Film Corporation. These organizations made significant contributions towards advancing opportunities, raising awareness about diversity issues within the entertainment industry, and providing support networks for Black actors and performers. It's important to note that this list is not exhaustive, as were many other regional and local organizations, collectives, and initiatives dedicated to promoting equal representation and better working conditions for Black artists across different disciplines within the performing arts community. It was not until the late 1950s and early 1960s that civil rights activists within the entertainment industry challenged these discriminatory practices. It wasn't until the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1964, which lawfully prohibited racial discrimination in public accommodations, included cinemas and play theaters, that helped to end some formal barriers preventing Black actors from joining unions such as SAG-AFTRA. However, despite this legislation and the civil rights movement, Black actors and actresses within the entertainment industry were still denied equal access to opportunities, fair compensation, recognition, and respectful treatment. Let's talk about SAG-AFTRA, who represents approximately 160,000 actors, announcers, broadcast journalists, dancers, DJs, news writers, news editors, program hosts, puppeteers, recording artists, singers, stunt performers, voice-over artists, and other media professionals. I was looking on SAG-AFTRA's Diversity Committee page, and I found it odd that there is no committee for Black Americans. This says a lot. Talk about being invisible. And it's odd that Black members have accepted this. Some are calling SAG-AFTRA more of a guild, an association of people with similar interests or pursuits, than a union, because it does not serve the majority of its members. And judging by the salaries of its administrative staff, it could be seen as inauthentic in their representation of the members, especially Black performers, who rarely see any specific benefit from their advocacy. The struggles of entertainers highlighted in this video are ongoing fights for genuine representation and balance in Hollywood. Unions exist primarily to represent their members' interests, fight for improved benefits, protect rights, and advocate for better compensation. High salaries at the top are potentially problematic. How can those entrusted within the union negotiating on members' behalf be truly understanding or sharing artists' financial challenges? Black actors and actresses have been struggling with systemic racism and discrimination throughout history, and the entertainment industry is no exception. Unfortunately, Black professionals are underrepresented in high-level positions such as managers, studio heads, directors, and producers. This scarcity of diverse voices in key decision-making positions has marginalized Black performers in the industry, hindering their ability to tell authentic stories and advocate for balance and equitable treatment on set. Although the SAG-AFTRA strike aimed to address industry issues, it did not directly benefit Black actors and actresses in terms of wage gaps, hiring practices, leadership roles, or the fact that Black people remain at the bottom caste of the industry. While this agreement was a significant event, it will not resolve the complex challenges faced by Black creatives. The question I'm asking: will Black actors and actresses decide they have had enough and begin to form their own unions or take initiatives to promote advances in addressing systemic racism as we did for ourselves in the early years of the entertainment industry? Or will things go back to business as usual once the deal has been ratified, leaving Black creatives worse off than before, especially with the introduction of AI? Will this be another failed alliance added to the long list of many?